Mabrika! Welcome to a new episode of Let's Talk Taino. I'm Priscilla Colon, co-founder and creative here at Casa Reito, where our mission is to promote the Taino language and culture. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that can be very confusing to folks in the Taino community. We have 4 different variants of Taino, and they're not always exactly the same. So, I'm going to share with you some language learning tips that I learned as a little girl that will help you navigate the different variants of Taino. And you're going to see how much in common we have with each other. You may not realize it, but my first language was not English. It was Spanish. I didn't learn English until I was in 2nd grade. And language learning was really hard. There were a lot of us kids there from a lot of different countries. There were people from Turkey, Japan, Taiwan, Israel, Germany, Guatemala, and so much more. It was like having a mini UN in my 2nd grade class. Of course, I didn't always understand what I was trying to learn in English. But luckily for me, my 2nd grade teacher was a Brazilian Portuguese speaker. So she would try to explain things to me in Brazilian Portuguese, which is very similar to Spanish. I would then translate in my mind into Spanish and then figure out what the English was trying to tell me. This was like doing language gymnastics, switching from Portuguese, translating it into Spanish, then the Spanish back to Portuguese, just to figure out the English. However, my mind was actually developing great strength and flexibility with languages, having to bounce back and forth among these 3 languages. Later on, I was able to learn French when I was 12 years old. And I used those same skills that I had acquired when I was very young to learn the French language. I was able to focus on what's the same. Spanish, Portuguese, and French have the same Latin roots. So a lot of the words are similar. For example, when I say I am in Spanish, I say yo soy. In Portuguese, it's eu sou. And in French is je suis. You'll notice that the words soy, so, and suis are very similar. Then, if you take a look at that subject, I, you'll notice that they're very similar in the languages. Yo, eu, and je. Since 2018, 4 variants of Taino have been created. These include Taino Naiki, the variant that I teach, Keeping the Taino Language Alive by Richard Porrata, the Hiwatahia Taino Language Reconstruction, and Guajia Taino, which just came out this year. Now, some folks are worried that each of these variants is teaching very different words. Yes, that's true, but remember, they're all basing themselves on the same words that survived the last 530 years. So there's a lot that is similar. Let's use that same trick that I used when I was younger to focus on the similarities and compare these variants. We'll start by looking at how you say my name is in the 4 variants. Now, we're going to imagine that 4 students are introducing themselves in each of these Taino variants. Let's take a look at those phrases. Da Canulia Cynthia. That's in the Taino Naiki variant. Da Irika John. That's in the Taino variant by Richard Porrata. Da Irile Soraya. That's in the Hiwatahia variant. Diri Luis. That's in the Taino variant by Roberto Mucaro Borrero. So we're going to start by looking at the similarities in each of these phrases. Let's start with the subject. I've highlighted for you the subject in each of these sentences. Dak, da, and d. You see how similar they are? They're basing themselves on the same word for I, dak or da. You'll notice that the last variant, D apostrophe, is simply just getting rid of that A. So you see, it's very similar. Let's move on to the verb. Anulia in Taino Naiki is different from irika, irile, and iri in the other 3 variants. So we found more similarities among 3 of the variants this time. Now let's take a look at the end of that sentence. At the end of the sentence, you simply add your name to say, my name is. So in that short activity, we were able to figure out how to say, my name is, and insert our names into the 4 different variants of Taino that exist, noticing that sometimes they're similar in their subjects and sometimes they're similar in their verbs. They're always similar where you add your name. Really cool, huh? Let's take a look at the next phrase. How do you say I am Taino in each of these variants? Let's have the students tell us. Dakto ka Taino. That's in Taino Naiki. Daka Taino. That's in the Taino variant by Richard Porrata. Datraha Taino. That's in the Hiwatahia variant. Taino Daka. That's in the Taino variant by Roberto Mucaro Borrero. I bet you see a lot of the similarities, right? Just like in the last phrase, 3 of these Taino variants begin with I. Dak, da, and da. However, in the last phrase, you'll notice that this has been flipped. Da is closer to the end, not the beginning. Now, there's a reason for that. In many indigenous languages, they don't follow the subject-verb-object-word order. And that's why daka appears closer to the end of the sentence. Now let's take a closer look at the verb. In Taino Naiki, it's toka. In the Taino version by Richard Porrata, it's ka. In Hiwatahia, it's traha. And in the Taino variant by Roberto Mucaro Borrero, it's ka. In Taino, the full verb is toka. In Taino Naiki, the creator has decided to leave the full verb every time you see it to avoid confusion. In other variants, they have decided to drop that first to and just smush it together with the subject. But only sometimes. It can get a little complicated in some of those other variants. You'll also notice that a completely different verb is used in Hiwatahia, traha. But that's okay. Now that we know, we can use the appropriate verb when we're speaking one of the variants. Now let's take a look at the object of the sentence, Taino. You'll notice that it appears at the end for most of the variants, and at the beginning for the last one. You'll also notice that some of these variants use accent marks to tell you where to emphasize the word, and some of them do not. Again, this is up to the creator of the variants whether to use them or not. In those cases, you'll have to memorize how to say the word. In the cases with the accents will tell you how to say it. Are you ready for another phrase? How do you say, I speak Taino in the 4 variants? Let's read what each of the students tells us. Dak ahiya Taino. That's from Taino Naiki. Dahiya Taino. That's from the Taino variant by Richard Porrata. Da ahiya Taino. That's from Hiwatahia. Dahiya Taino. That's from the Taino variant by Roberto Mucaro Borrero. Wow, do you see how similar these variants are? I could barely tell the difference. Now let's take a look. Let's break down each of these sentences into its parts. As always, we start with I, which is dak, da, da, or D apostrophe. Next, let's take a look at that verb. Ahiya, hiya, ahiya, ahiya. Look at that! It's the same verb. Of course it is. It's the verb that was preserved from our ancestors. So now we know how to say speak or to speak in Taino in 4 different variants. And of course, Taino is the same across the variants as well. So what did this lesson show us? That we have so much more in common. There's so much more that unites us than separates us. I hope that you have been inspired to learn at least one of them, whether that's Taino Naiki with me or one of the other 3 variants. because that is how we're going to bring back Taino. As always, I can't thank you enough for joining me here week after week, learning about the language and culture of our ancestors. I'm having a blast, learning so much, doing so much research, and then sharing it with you. When you get the chance, check out all the resources we have at casareito.com, where you will find our children's books to help kids reconnect with the natural world and learn about the Taino language along the way. And don't forget our Taino language course that is currently in development. You will learn about history, culture, words, phrases and sentences, and even participate in conversations. In the meantime, tay kara ya, guaitiao nagu.